good lighting here without.
Looks good. Hey, everybody. We are, of course my phone rings. Hey, everybody. I'm Julie Barrett, and I'm here with my friend Eric at Mistral Comet on X. And we decided to do a little impromptu live stream to talk about some of the happenings in Washington State's House yesterday. Kind of a big deal, but also I would say, at least for me, it wasn't surprise. It was more of a when, not if, that was going to happen. And so for I don't have my X up right now, but for people that are just joining us, there was a House floor debate yesterday afternoon where the House Republicans and Democrats, they vote on the rules for the session, and the Democrats changed I think it's a 132-year rule that required a 2/3 vote to bring a bill to the floor for a vote that would end the debate and push the bill to the floor. They eliminated that, and now it can go with a simple majority, which the Democrats definitely have a simple majority. They didn't quite have 2/3. So it sounds to me this was definitely a power play of how they can just shut things down. And one of the things that I think is really significant about this is they're going to push things through faster.
Oh, there's no doubt. I think that's the only real effect here that it has, because obviously they have a majority in the House. They can get anything through that they want. All this does is give them the leeway to speed up the process, not allow Republicans to voice dissent or bring up points that they want. And it's just there simply if they want to limit debate. It's very interesting to see. I mean, how can you on your face go and look at the rules, a longstanding century-old rule, and then just do away with it for this in this situation, without sort of looking at it and going, you already have the majority, so you can get the bills passed that you want. There's nothing stopping them from doing what they want, as we've seen in the past legislative sessions. This is nothing that stands in the way of that. All this does is shut down the voice of the representatives of the elected people in these districts. This is just saying, okay, District 8, you don't have any voice if we don't want you. And that's it. That's all it does. So those two House representatives from District 8 who are Republicans, they're no longer guaranteed debate on the floor.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that debate does is, because it does fall on deaf ears, right? So when a Republican is getting up there and talking about, let's say, one of these bills that's going to remove parents' rights to getting access to their kids' medical records in schools, if a Republican is up talking about that, well, it's not going to change the Democrats' votes, but it goes on the record. And it goes out, it can be circulated through the media. It's sound bites that people can use, different media or citizens or whatever, to circulate those videos and articles and things like that. So it can be used for messaging. And now they're just shutting down the speech, allowing for no messaging.
Yeah, that's it. There's no actual measure. It's just a cudgel against speech that they don't want out there.
Yeah.
So, but I, like you said, it's not surprising. I mean, this is the gamesmanship that a lot of us have been seeing on the horizon as things have developed. I don't know about you, but my own experience, and I think yours share this, is we've been silenced as individual testifiers in many of these hearings. And this is just an extension of that. If the chair doesn't want people that they're familiar with testifying, they don't have to. So we don't get that voice at the convenience of the chair, right? And this is the same thing. So now, rather than the chair deciding, it's just the majority caucus deciding they don't want to hear from these people. And in many ways, like for the initiative process and for other reasons, that's well, these are the like you said, the media sound bites that the Republicans say, look, we fought back, we've tried to bring up these points. And another thing I think that is not considered here is we're not talking like filibuster type debate, right? We're not talking about long-standing grandstanding where they're just burning up the time and just going through that. This is only 3-minute blocks that are allowed to a minority of the representatives.
Right.
So if this were a filibuster, you could maybe make the argument, well, we can't get anything done. Okay. Well, you have the political authority to do it, okay, because you have the majorities. That's not impeding you. You are only, these people are only using 3 minutes of time on any given bill to debate and bring up points, and you're removing that. It's absolutely. It should encourage the public to pay more attention to who they're voting for, I would hope. But in reality, we'll see what the effect is long term. I know for an activist, a personal activist, an individual activist like myself, it's disheartening because now not only is my voice shut down, but the voices of the representatives of the people in the entirety of Washington state. So
right. Yeah, and you made a point on X about so just so people that are watching kind of understand, in case you don't know, because me 4 years ago I didn't know this, so that's why I'm sharing it with you. But so you go into these committee meetings and there is a chair, and all of the chairs are Democrats because they have the majority, and then there is a vice chair that's also a Democrat, and then there's a ranking member, and the ranking member is the highest ranking Republican on the committee. And so as the ranking member, they have a little bit of pull in that committee as to who is going to get to testify. If there's like a big gun bill or something like that, the ranking member gets to have some input on which testifiers will get a chance to speak. And so Eric made a post about having some help from the ranking member about making citizen voices heard. And that is something that we haven't seen in the House. We haven't seen anyone advocating for the citizen voices. And, I consider CLW to be a citizen voice because we are citizen activists. We're not paid a salary. We don't, we truly are there representing the voice of the people. And a lot of the House Republicans, the leadership, don't like us or don't like me. And they have told the caucus not to work with me, not to talk to me, not to talk with anybody that's affiliated with us. And I just think that is they're in a minority. They need all the help that we can get. So you might not like that we disagree with you on this bill over here, but if we agree on this one, don't you want us to help you? Don't you want to, can't we work? And I think that's kind of the purity test of Republicans. And it's not just in Washington. I mean, it hurts on every level in every state and at a national level, but you have to agree with me on everything for us to work together at all. I think that's crap. And I think that's a huge part of the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, this might be a structural issue as far as how these meetings are run. Again, according to the rules that the Democrats write.
Right.
But even here now, I mean, you make an excellent point. But how does this now spill over into before? Maybe we did have a sympathetic ear in the sort of ranking member on certain bills, but now if they're now limited in the debate on the floor, will that somehow spill over here? Like, hey, we're going to shut debate down on you if you allow or if you sort of stick up for people in these hearings that we don't like. I'm worried that maybe that this will be further leverage that some of the Democrat power hungry people will use on the floor. Like, hey, we'll just vote to shut your debate down so you can't talk at all on this bill if you stick up in these hearings for these people. It's very demoralizing, but
we've had some citizens on our legislative action team that have been testifying these first 2 weeks of the session And they're regulars, they're like us, maybe not quite as regular as us, but they're known entities. And a couple of them have been completely shut out of hearings. And they'll, and the chair, so in the Senate Education Committee, the chair took up 13 minutes of the 30-minute block for a bill, talking, listening, she just likes to hear herself talking about her bill, how great it was. And then after she got done with, this was after she, explained the bill. Yeah, exactly. Oh, we're almost out of time. So we're going to have to move the clock to 60 seconds and we won't be able to hear the last panel.
Yeah. Again, it's more structural problems in how these meetings are run. Yeah.
Yep.
Our voice, I think for a long time, a lot of people don't believe that the hypothetical could happen. No, these are reasonable people. They would never touch a 132-year-old long-standing rule. These are reasonable people at the end of the day. I think that needs to be omitted from our thought process here. And I don't mean to be overly cynical, because I think that I do believe that a lot of Democrat legislators and people in their offices are probably very good people. But I think that the taste of power has gotten too sweet.
Yep.
And now they're starting to understand just what sort of leverage they have. And they are so close to having extreme transformative powers over the entire structure of Washington state government that they're going for it. And this is them going for it. Because if we wind up with supermajorities in both houses and these transformative laws that basically eradicate the voice of representation and the voice directly from the people like you and I, well, they're unstoppable. And I think we can all say they're unstoppable now to a certain degree. There may be checks and balances that still exist. I'm not sure what they are,
right.
but
I don't know.
But maybe there are, but we're just getting closer and closer to the eventuality where there is no more. I think that's where we're headed. And I hope that people in Washington state start to understand that and listen to your experience, my experience, and with their own eyes and ears, listen to the legislators who are, who are saying it outright. We don't want people to speak. We don't want to hear your voice. We don't want to hear your initiatives. We don't want to hear you're sticking up for your liberties and rights. We don't want to hear it anymore. We're going to leverage you out of the picture.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate.
So one of the things that I see a lot, and I'm sure you see it too, when people in Washington see this kind of thing of, what happened yesterday, or, one of these horrible bills, there's another slate of terrible anti-2A bills. There's so many bad bills, as per usual, and they see these and they're like, oh, unconstitutional. Oh, they're not going to get away with this. And they hear this and they're like, well, this can't continue. Well, what are you going to do about it? How's it going to change? Who's going to stop it? I mean, do you think do you think it's so overwhelming for people that they just, say things like that because they hope that some, justice system in the sky is going to fix all this? Or what? Because I mean, you're in the trenches, you've seen it firsthand. So what are your thoughts when you hear that kind of thing?
I think people are inherently good and they want to believe that the systems are inherently good. I don't think anybody wants to be cynical when faced with these things and look at them as if they're broken, because the effect of that is vastly more terrible than we can imagine. And I think it's hard for people to grasp. We still look at the power structures in place as checks and balances. We believe that the people in power, do have good interests that at the end of the day will be righteous in some way. And I think that's maybe where we're getting things wrong. We have to start performing as if our lives depended on this stuff. Because just like our forefathers and the people that have crafted some of these important protections, we have to craft our own protections. We have to engage like they did, as if our life depends on it. I think it's difficult for people to understand just how that is. I know from my own experience, and I think you're sharing this, but when I talk with people who've sort of become activated to do things like we're doing, something extreme has happened in their life enough to really trigger something transformative, where they say, enough is enough. I have to step in and do what I can because this is going bad. I've had a couple experiences in my life, and that has led me to the idea, like, things are broken, and the faith that I once had in the systems is now unfounded because nobody's taking care of them. Nobody's having stewardship over it. And I think that's where we're at. Is it's difficult for people to arrive at that because it's painful. It is painful to understand.
Yeah, I often, with the stuff that's going on with, and you and I had this conversation the other day. I don't like to call it parental rights. I like to say it's the children have a right to the protection of, by their parents. And I think a lot of parents don't understand how terrible the laws are in Washington, and how much the government can really infringe upon your family. They hear my story and what happened to our family, and I think it is very severe. But it's one of those things you hear that it's almost like it's impossible to fathom that ever happening to you. It's something that happens to other people, and before it happened to me, I would definitely, if I had heard that story, I'd definitely say, well, gosh, that's something that happens to other people. And it's scary to me because I think that for a lot of people to actually get it, they're going to have some sort of, situation like that impact their own family directly, or it's going to just become so common in Washington that you can't ignore it, which is awful because that will be so harmful to the children.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons we're doing this, right? I mean,
right. Exactly.
I know in my own experience, that is the driving factor.
Right.
I look at this and I'm like, I'm okay. I'm warm. I have my wood burning stove. I have my natural
For
gas.
now.
I have a car that I can get in and drive freely out of state. I have all of these protections for myself. What I fight for now, I have my 2A rights, and I've been able to use those. What I'm fighting for now has nothing to do with my comfort level now. What I'm fighting for now is what my children and grandchildren could potentially be subject to. And that's a strategy I don't know that everybody employs, because if we start thinking in terms of, I'm fighting for my rights now, I think your strategy is too narrow, and you can't see the required increments that need to happen to get ourselves unburied out of this. But if you look at a time scale that's longer, 30 years and 5 years or 30 years down the road, you can start to say, okay, I just need to do this little bit of change now and then build on it later. And that's an example we can take of from the Democrats in the state and in other places, but that's what they've employed. They took the laws that were built back in the 80s and the 90s regarding sort of mental health care of children, and the idea of the good law that was probably passed with good intentions, but then they started changing it incrementally and squeaking away and learning where they could get power in little spots. And that's where we find ourselves today. But that's because a lot of them think on time scales much longer than just our individual needs. So
yeah, that's a good point. The Democrats are very good at the long game, and they've got strategy, which is something that people to the right of insanity are lacking strategy, and they're lacking that long-term vision. And how do we get from here to there? And, I think Jim Walsh is really good about the inching, strategy, like with his bill to raise the age of consent for certain medical things from 13 to 17. Well, he didn't like do it across the board at everything. But if we can pick, these few like critical pieces, maybe we can start moving this in the right direction. And then we do like the Democrats do. We come back again next year and we move it a little bit more. People on our side tend to want to go 0 to 60. They want a 180-degree change, and it just and it's like all or nothing, right? And we've got to somehow start educating people on this, inch by inch, bite by bite kind of thing.
Yeah. But it's hard for them to be uncomfortable in the meantime, I think.
Yeah.
It's a struggle that I go through too, even when I'm sitting here and I'm waiting for a committee hearing testimony, and I don't know whether or not it's uncomfortable. I got other shit I got to do. Sorry.
Right.
No, but I got other things I have to do. I got to power through it and grit and just make it happen. And I think that's hard. And I totally understand it. We have lives to lead. The strategy issue and reevaluating how we visualize this change, I think, is important. And also thinking outside the box strategy wise, because there's a lot of entrenched power structures in our political system, as we've both witnessed and both, sort of been run over by and come to understand. Those power structures don't necessarily like how you and I think or you and I want to sort of work. But if we understand that and we start to sort of pragmatically balance what we do, I think we can think outside the box and work in tandem with them to success. I do believe it's possible. Boy, but yeah, there's a drive that everybody wants a pill that's going to fix it directly.
Right.
And that's not a feasible solution at this point in time. You'd need attorneys, you need financial resources, you need relentless people with energy and time to devote specifically to this problem. And I don't know that, I don't have it. I'm happy to add what I can, but I'm only a component, and finding those people to be critical. But I can do incremental work, and I think most people can too, if they just understand how to do it. So,
right. And that was the whole goal with when everything happened with my daughter, and then seeing this need for, I saw that, and like you did, because we started doing this at the same time. We showed up and we're like, where are all the other testifiers?
Yeah.
And so you and I both had this, and you much more than I did, but kind of like, we're going to show up. We're going to be the people that show up and be the resistance here. And then, just wanting to use my platform to educate people and try to engage them in that same process, because we need an army. And unfortunately, we just don't have it. We don't have, and I get it, right? Like, people are working and people have kids, and the other side, is very heavily union driven, and, they've got all the state, departments that are speaking up in favor of these bills and all that. So they are, that's kind of their job for a lot of these left wing unions and organizations and things like that, where on our side, it's truly the citizen activist that's taking away their time from other valuable things that they could be doing to try to make an impact.
Yeah. Well, we can see with this House Resolution 4607, they want to shut down as much as they possibly can. Wouldn't surprise me if we see some changes. I wonder what rules apply to hearings specifically that can be changed moving forward, and we'll have to sort of look at that, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, they already don't, the Democrats and some of the Republicans don't like hearing from us. How do you see this? Will this impact how, and I know you've kind of shifted things just in your life in general, but will this impact your engagement in the legislative process?
I don't think so, because my number one ethos here, I guess, is to be relentless. And I have had to change some things, like you said, but I think that still applies. I think a relentless approach at every stage available to us is important, no matter how much they constrain us. That being said, understanding where the focus should be when energy is tight is going to be, I mean, that's a reality here.
Yeah.
If the House is an ineffective place to go now because they've really done away with rules, then energy should be spent elsewhere. And
Yeah.
that's the case. And you know, if the legislature as a whole becomes a place where energy is now just a vacuous hole we're shoveling our crap into for no apparent reason, well, then we got to find a different strategy and readjust and evolve with
Right.
the landscape that they're presenting us with. So will it change the methods that I employ? Yeah, but I'm not quite sure yet how.
Yeah.
And I think it, I think really what this should do is the Republican minorities, the Republican minority should change their approach here and really start making some big motions and getting some attention. Because I
Yep.
think that Washington in general is going to be very reasonable in how they view this action by itself. And I think that's important. Um, I think that if I can help the Republicans in the House in any way, I'm happy to do it. I want to do it. I just need to sort of be welcomed to do it if I
Right.
can. But whether or not they do it, it will change how I interact, I guess, if
Yeah.
that answers your question.
It does. Yep. And I think, you make a really good point. And, I actually said this to a Republican representative in Washington just a little bit before the session started. Because she had said she didn't want to work with us because she didn't like that, we call out good Republicans. And I'm guessing that she means like in the roll calls and when we expose things, because I know that I've never like been disrespectful or demeaning to, I try to be really careful about that, like that we can disagree on policy and votes and it's not personal. Like I'm not going to make it personal. But they don't like that. And so anyway, so she and I were kind of going back and forth and I said, look, it's okay. I think it's okay for us to, like, as conservatives, don't we value the difference of thought, right? And independent thinking. And I think it's okay for us to not align on every single thing, but why should that stop us from working together when we do agree? I mean, I'd work with a Democrat if we agreed on the policy.
Yeah, good point.
So I would love to, see more of that just because I think it would help, not me or conservative ladies necessarily, but I think it would be healthy for Washington state, the GOP, the Republican Party in Washington state for, independent thinking to be, maybe not even embraced, but just, tolerated. 'Cause they don't really talk, and it's not one-sided. It's kind of everybody wants, my way or the highway, and that doesn't work very well. And I don't think that's working for Washington. So I don't know where I was going with that. But
Well, yeah,
I
I
think
think
there could be more collaboration and cooperation between people that consider themselves not radical left Democrats. I think that would be a way. That's how you start making a way forward.
yeah, opening doors to
Yeah.
disagreement, opening doors in knowing that disagreement is going to happen, and then arriving at a central point. I know that that's a bad word. We can't use the word center these days, but arriving at a point where we can discuss and be effective.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the politics behind this, I don't know if you have the same thing, but the politics that surround the legislative sessions and things like that is not something that's easy to learn, at least for me. Um, and I don't quite understand it, because I look at this as like, that's just plain wrong, like impairing the children's ability to be represented by their parents in law, by impairing that, by taking kids and putting them elsewhere, is a wrong thing to do. And I don't balance that with a political agenda in mind. I just look at that as morally and ethically incorrect, and incorrect as far as what I understand my natural rights to be, and the children's natural rights. But I think politicians, they balance that. They have to balance that. And I don't know how that works. I mean, I'm not an expert politician, but knowing that, from where I stand, is important. And the way they could express that to me is by reaching out, and maybe to you too,
Right.
and saying, look, we had to disagree here. Here's why. And then we can have a discussion, and then we can be a beacon to the rest of the people we need support from, to say we can not get along on this issue, but still work together.
Right.
And I mean, that's something I think, what I've observed is sort of difficult for me, just a normie, to understand. And maybe there's a boundary there I need to work on, even too. But as far as I'm concerned, it's either right or wrong. And
Right. Well, and I think
that's
that's
right.
like, and I think you and I probably agree on most bills that we look at. We both probably share similar perspective, but I think there's been a time or two that we haven't seen eye to eye on something,
Yeah.
or maybe just not, like, maybe I saw something as being really, really bad and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Um, and that doesn't prevent us from, working together. And so, we would certainly, we still have our team in Washington, ladies working really hard there, and we would welcome the opportunity to support the Republicans how we can. We are absolutely not go along to get along. So we won't, if we don't agree on an issue, we won't agree, but where we do agree, we'd love to support them. And we would love to be able to rally the citizens to help with that. So be good to build some bridges, but I don't know. So as far as conservative ladies of Washington, we will not be testifying in the House anymore for now. And part of it is, and as you know, I'm not testifying at all this session, because they've decided that since I live in Florida, I shouldn't testify. But if you're a gun lobbyist from Idaho, or if you're a gun lobbyist from, wherever, or any kind of lobbyist from out of state, it is totally fine for you to testify.
Yeah. Well, you played the game. You played their game according to their rules, and
Right.
people are more comfortable with that.
Right.
Yeah. And we're kind of mavericks in a lot of ways, and they don't really like that.
Yeah.
But they
But
should
to
get
continue with
along with
that, I
mavericks.
kind of went off on my own little tangent there. As you know, like, it's a time requirement to sit through a committee hearing, and you may or may not get to testify. And so for our team that represents conservative ladies, I don't feel that it's right for me to ask them to go sit in these hearings when our voice has been, it's already disregarded by Democrats. It's disregarded by some of the Republicans. And now the Democrats have really just thrown down the gauntlet and said, we don't even want your representatives here. So screw you guys.
Yeah.
But we will absolutely continue pushing out calls to action and getting citizens to weigh in on bills. And if citizens want to testify, we will help them with preparing testimony or teaching them what's involved in that and helping them make that happen. So we're not like, swearing off the session, but we are, like you said, you have to figure out where you put your energy. And I don't think that's an effective place for us to put our energy.
Well, imagine, how much we've learned over the last few years and how we've developed already.
Right.
It's only going to get better for people like us in how we are able to spend that energy. I can't tell you how many times I think back to starting this and how much I did not know, but how much now I know. And I think it's only
Oh,
going to get better, especially for somebody like yourself who's so effective at sort of rallying people around. I think it's only going to get better if we continue putting forth the energy. Evolution, evolving as these things change. I mean, that makes perfect sense. We have to, according to these strategies, and in response to Democrats evolving themselves. So
right.
I think it's a right move to recalculate, regroup, and come back even stronger.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, I wanted to share something with you and everybody that's watching here in Florida. You know, the Republican uh, registered voters far outweigh. I think it's like over 1 million now. The Democrats, and one of the things you will hear amongst elected Republicans and in the GOP is we want to make Florida inhabitable for Democrats. And as I was watching that video from the House Republicans in Washington yesterday, I thought the Democrats want to make Washington
yes.
uninhabitable for Republicans.
Yeah.
So, and down here, as a Republican in Florida, I'm like, yeah, make it uninhabitable. But then I look at my friends in Washington, I'm like, oh man.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's indicative of the social and ideological divide that our country is suffering, and in mass. Those two,
Yeah,
polar opposites that aren't even that opposite. A lot of these people have the same values and worries and concerns in their day-to-day lives, but for whatever reason, the politicians are exploiting it to affect change.
right,
I've often had the thought, like, okay, if I were in a Republican supermajority, how would I, in Washington State, how would I view this? Would I still view this the same? Would I think that this is a healthy representative government? And I have to intellectually be honest with myself, and I'd have to say probably not. As
right,
much as I value conservative influence and have conservative ideas on things, I don't know that the governance of the people should be one-sided either way,
right,
you know? And even though I wholeheartedly believe in conservative values as being a lot of the right way to go, I think that if I'm being intellectually honest with myself and morally and ethically honest, a balanced government in any case is going to be a better representation of
right.
the people as a whole. And um, I
Yeah.
like the idea of having a Republican super vote majority for a very narrow window of time. And then,
Well, and
okay,
I
let's work
should
out.
clarify that the Democrat the legislature in Florida isn't trying to take that's from with the comment about making it uninhabitable. That was not
Yeah,
from legislators, and they don't play that game. And the Democrats do get to be a voice in Florida and the legislature. And I think that's important because if you have elected officials, they should get to be a voice for the people that they represent. That is
yeah,
the way that our American government is set up, and what's going on in Washington is truly anti-American, and it has been anti-American for a while. Um, we're going on 40 minutes. I promised you 20, so we can wrap this up. I appreciate you taking some time out of your Saturday. So I just DM'd Eric and I'm like, hey, do you want to jump on a live stream and chat about what's going on in the Washington House? And he was like, sure. So I appreciate your willingness to do that. Any last thoughts that you want to get up? Make sure you guys are following Eric on X. It's at Mr. Comet. He's a good one to follow. Has a lot of good insights, and he's sassy too, which I appreciate that. Very direct and to the point. But any last thoughts that you want to share?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think if I could reach out to every person in Washington who's frustrated by this process, I would just have to say, yes, yep, I am frustrated as well. And, but like anything, you know, we gotta work through being frustrated. Um,
Yep.
we can't have faith in other people. We've got to engage with our own hands, and watch these things with our own eyes and ears. And that's where we got to start working at this. I'm here. That's what I'm doing. That's what Julie's doing. And the more people we get, we won't see returns instantly. It's not going to be an immediate thing. but these things continue to work, and we continue to work together. We're going to solve problems better. And I think we shouldn't give, don't be overly frustrated. We're going through hell, and we got to keep going.
Just got to keep on going.
Yep.
I had a thought. When a toddler gets frustrated, what do? They kick and they scream and they are very loud.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Washington, if you are frustrated, I would encourage you to start being loud. Flood their inboxes with emails telling them about their bills, and just be a thorn in their side. That's the whole reason that Eric and I both have started. When we got started, we wanted to be a voice. We wanted to be a thorn in their side. We wanted to be loud so that they couldn't just do this stuff in silence. So I would encourage you, if you're frustrated, put that energy into speaking out, and directly to the legislators. And you guys can go to our website, which is conservativeladiesofwa.com. We've got a legislative action center there where you can find all the bills. You can find bills that we've highlighted as key bills, but you can use that to see where bills are, and it'll help you message to your legislators as well. So that's a tool that you can use, and we'll keep putting out messaging on all this legislation, and we're not out of the fight. So it's just kind of regroup, re-strategize, and figure out where we go from here.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So Definitely. Thanks everybody for joining us on this Saturday. Thanks, Eric, for being with us. And
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. See you guys later. Have a great rest of your weekend.
See ya.